have an interesting story to tell you first, though, about one of my friends. He was just telling me he moved here 5 years ago and had absolute sticker shock and didn't understand what was happening in the market. It felt incredibly overpriced to him. Now, mind you, this is in 2021, before we had all of our crazy appreciation. So he decided to rent and kind of check out the area for a little bit. And then he realized after 2 years, he had just missed out on all kinds of equity gains. This video is to help you understand what is going on in the market and help you try to make sense of it, because it's really important that you understand both location, which I have other videos on, but also what is happening in the market as a whole. I was just sitting on our Denver Market Trends Committee for the Realtor Association, and we were discussing the fact that there are some very strange things happening here in 2026. And in order for agents to do a good job of coaching their clients on how to make offers, how to set list prices, it's really important that you are up to date on the current trends. I had a client recently who was incredibly confused because one home had sold in just a day with a bidding wars over the list price, and other homes were sitting on the market for way longer than the average. So what in the world is happening here, and what does this mean for you as a buyer coming into this city so you don't miss out on a home that you love, but you also don't overpay for it? I'm Heather. I've been selling real estate in the Denver area for 7 years, and I also was a math teacher before, and so I really enjoy teaching people about the numbers. And I'm on the Denver Metro Association of Realtors Market Trends Committee. So I work with realtors to help them learn more about the market, and I'm one of the expert writers for that committee. So a lot of what you'll be seeing today is from that report, and it's also from my title gal, Megan Eller. I have to give her a shout out because a lot of this data comes from her. The reason I use these other sources of data instead of Redfin or Zillow or anything else you might find in the news is because the news tends to be outdated. And let me explain that before we actually jump into the data. A property that went under contract in March, sold in April, and now we're just now getting the data in May, which means what I'm about to talk about is really showing you the trends that have happened over the course of the spring. So this data that you have today is as timely as it possibly can be. And instead of being, 30 to 60 days behind, I'm going to talk to you about how to look at what the market's doing, not just in the whole Denver metro area, but also in the small pockets that you might actually be interested in. Because a condo in downtown Denver might be very, very different than, let's say, Highlands Ranch mansions. And so what you are looking for specifically is incredibly important. And there's all of these little niche markets that I can help you discover what is actually happening in each of those markets, especially if you give me a call or schedule on my calendar. It's actually one of my favorite things to do. Just pull up my charts and give you a little overview on what's happening in the market and what you can expect when you move here to the Denver area. Okay, so let's jump into the actual secrets about what's happening in the Denver area right now. I'm going to talk about the surprising numbers for appreciation for 2026, the atypical seasonality, the confusing days on market statistics, the inventory paradox, and then I'm also going to talk about a few things that actually are not that crazy and what you might expect when you come here to make a purchase, because you really do need an expert on the market to help guide you. So good news, I'm here to take care of you. Okay, so let's talk about prices, because the surprising part of this market is that they're relatively flat over the last couple of years. And specifically what I mean is if you were to kind of draw a trend line across the last 3 years of prices, our year-over-year appreciation is really close to zero. This year specifically, in April, the average price is $721,000, which I know that seems incredibly steep, but guess what? The last 4 years, we've seen almost exactly that same peak. We're actually down slightly from 2022, where we had our high at $738,000. 2023 peaked at $723,000. 2024 peaked at $724,000. So I'm kind of wondering here, are we peaking again? The interesting part to me is that typically prices go up, up, up in the spring months. When you look at this bar chart, it shows you the average monthly price changes. And this is what I mean by the kind of atypical seasonality of the market. If you notice, prices tend to go up in the spring and then start to fall again in the summer months. Do you see how you can barely see the red bar for April of 2026? That's because prices were actually down by 0.9%. That's what I mean by surprisingly flat. Usually we are seeing incredible appreciation in these spring months, and so it's super confusing, just like the weather is. When we look at the year-to-date snapshot, we have an average close price of $700,000. And compared to 2025, that's only 0.26% lower, and it's 1% higher than 2024. Flat. This is what I'm talking about. But here's what I actually think is happening, and this is why I made this graph. I think that we are rebalancing from the COVID boom era. Our normal appreciation in the Denver area is around 6%, and that's average over the course of the last 50 years. But in 2020 to 2021, we had a 24% price appreciation. Yes, I said that, 24%. And then we had another peak in 2022, a 19% jump. So for us to not have a significant amount of appreciation right now feels okay to me. To be honest, I actually like it for people who are trying to purchase a home because affordability is such an issue, and I'll get into that here in a little bit. Here's the next super crazy thing that's happening in the Denver area. We have a crazy amount of listings for sale. So if somebody comes here and they say to me, I just can't find anything at all, I'm like, okay, well, you're not working with the right realtor, because if I work with you, I will be able to find you a house that you love. If you just look at year-to-date data, they will tell you that we have less listings right now. Yes, so as compared to last year in April, we have slightly less listings available. We have 12,768, and April of last year we had 13,000. Okay, so not that much less. But when you look back historically, we have more properties for sale in the month of April than we've had since like 2012. So the prices in any market usually will be determined by supply and demand. Well, if we look at our supply and we think we have way more properties for sale, one would expect that properties would be decreasing in value, but they're not. They're flat. We just talked about that a second ago. So what in the world is happening? Well, is it tons of buyer demand? No, it's definitely not. Let me show you that graph. I'm going to show you two graphs. This is the pending one, and this is the closed one. And if you notice, they're relatively similar, because when something goes under contract, it usually gets to closing. So here's what I do, and this is why I think my data is actually better than all of the other data. I use the pending graph because it might be slightly off, but if you can look at just the general trends, we see the pendings following the closed very, very closely. And if you look, you'll notice that our pendings are way lower. This is our demand. How many people are actually making offers on properties? Okay, so we have way less people making offers on properties, and we have tons of inventory. So you would really think that the prices were dropping, but they're not. Here's what I think about this, and this is literally my expert opinion from having a degree in math, from teaching math, from talking with all of the Denver Market Trends Committee, and also from helping people buy and sell houses in the Denver area. I believe that there are sellers who want to sell, but they're not willing to take less than they want to sell their house. And so they're listing their homes for sale, but they're not okay with huge lowball offers. So a buyer might come in and say, yeah, I want $20,000 in concessions to help me, but the seller is going to look at them and say, yeah, you're crazy. I'm not selling to you then. And that actually, that literally just happened to me this last weekend. So I'll tell you what we're going to do and how we're going to solve that problem for my client at the end of this video. And that's why so many homes are lingering on the market. So let's go back to high school algebra for a second, right? Median versus average days on market. And this is what is really crazy. And I kind of alluded to that at the beginning of this video. Average days on market for April was 40 days on market. So it takes longer than a month to sell a property in Denver. And yet median days on market is 14. So what happens to pull that median down? Well, median means that half of the homes sold in 2 weeks or less, okay? And the other half took longer than that, which means that a ton of properties, because that average is so much higher, are taking way longer than a month to sell, maybe 2 months. Okay, so a buyer coming into this market will look and say, hey, what's wrong with this property? Well, maybe nothing's wrong with the property. Maybe the seller just really wants to get a certain price and they're just not willing to drop their price anymore, and they're not willing to take a lowball offer. When you are looking at a property, it's really important to have an agent who can both check out the neighborhood data, because look at this graph. Look at all of the different areas that have such a variance on how long it takes for a property to sell. If you'll notice, the circle of highways around Denver kind of shows you the general metro, and those areas really are moving a little bit faster, with the reds and yellows and orange colors showing a lower median days on market. And as you get further out, it's a little bit less competitive and it takes longer for those properties to sell. But each little pocket, each little zip code of the Denver area has a very different feel to it. If you do want to sit down and look at each of these areas together, here's my number. Let's actually talk about what makes sense for you, because even though the average price is $722,000, I work with buyers who are looking for high-end properties well into the millions, and they want very specific things about their location, and they also don't want to overpay. And I also work with people who are entry level, looking in the 500,000s, and just really want to find a great place that's not going to fall apart on them and is going to be a safe location. So definitely schedule a call with me, because every person's situation is very different, and that's what I do best, is help people work with all of their information on their lifestyle as well as the numbers. Okay, finally, I want to explain to you what is actually happening when somebody makes an offer. And we use all of these terms in real estate, like close to list price ratio or DOM, days on market, and how they correlate. But I really like this chart specifically because it shows you specifically what happens. If a property sells in the first week, obviously, the seller is probably going to get at or above their list price. You can't go in and try to lowball them right away. But as you notice, the longer something stays on the market, the more willing a seller is to negotiate a little bit. And here's the strategy really behind what you can look for in getting a deal in this market. You start with the original list price, and then quite possibly there are price reductions. And so you have to be really careful when listening to statistics about close to list price ratios. The DMAR market trends report does only show the current close to list price ratio as opposed to the original close to list price ratio. And the reason that matters is because 36% of sellers are having to reduce their price, and that price reduction is an average of 5.7%. Okay, so let's do a little bit of math on that. $600,000 property, 5% off is around $30,000. That's a lot of money coming out of a seller's net proceeds, right? And then if you make an offer on top of that, asking for seller concessions, I'll explain why that's beneficial to you here in a minute. That also comes out of the seller's net proceeds. And so the closed price minus those seller concessions gives you the net sold price. So sellers are having to both reduce their price or price correctly to begin with. That's the smartest choice. Or they drop their price little by little until they get to a point where a buyer really sees value. And as a buyer, you can see the value, but also want to keep your payment under a certain amount. So the way you handle that is with seller concessions to help you buy down the interest rate. So check out this spreadsheet. I would be happy to share it with you. Just send me a quick message that says rate buy down and I will share it with you. If you have an $800,000 property and you're putting 10% down, I'm just gonna assume some things about this in order to demonstrate what I'm talking about. A 6% interest rate, let's say, if you ask for a price reduction of $25,000, you as a buyer are saving $140 per month in the net monthly payment. Now, this is not including taxes or insurance, and of course you want to talk to a mortgage professional. I can connect you with one. But if you take that same exact $25,000 and instead look at strategy 4, you ask the seller to use the entire amount to help you buy down the interest rate permanently for the entire life of the loan, so your interest is less. You are saving $400 a month instead of $140. So do you see how much better that can be for you as a buyer? And by the way, it's exactly the same net to the seller, and then they just get what they want, which is to move. So if you see a property that's been on the market for a week or so, you probably won't be able to do this. In fact, you might end up in a bidding war if you offer on the first weekend. However, if you see a property that's been on the market for a while, it could potentially be overpriced and there might be some negotiating room. So is Denver a little bit of a struggle for affordability? It is, but also things are softening a little bit. And that's kind of the crazy part about this market. And it's okay to make a purchase right now when appreciation is flat. Real estate is a long game. And so I'm here to help you figure out your lifestyle over time and make a purchase that you'll be happy in for a long period of time and then will slowly appreciate. All right, I'm gonna tell you very lastly the things that are not crazy about this market. Prices depend on their location. So look at this graph. You need a realtor who can help you determine which neighborhood is going to sell quickly and which home is definitely overpriced for the area. The other thing that's very common is the difference between attached versus detached properties. And what I mean by that is attached are townhomes or patio homes or condos. Detached properties have land, right? So more people want to buy land in the Denver area and really everywhere, right? But if you can't afford a detached property because they're more expensive, then it's okay to buy something that maybe has less maintenance, or maybe the HOA covers the roof and the exterior and it actually fits in your budget. The other thing that is not crazy is we do not have hardly any distressed transactions, foreclosures, short sales. I've worked with a couple of people who wanted to sell their property and it was gonna be a short sale and they just chose to rent it for a year, get a little bit more appreciation and sell it at that point. So distressed transactions are very, very minimal. The way you get a deal is by hiring an agent who knows how to read the data, who knows how to talk to the other agent, and who knows how to negotiate for you. So what do you do? Well, you hire me, of course. Give me a call. I would really love to chat with you. It's my absolute passion to work with people on moving to the Denver area. I'm Heather O'Leary with eXp Realty. Have a great day.